Okay, let's get started. We are in the middle of chapter 18. I acknowledge that the first three quarters of this chapter, of which we've done half of that, is a bit esoteric. I'll give you a little bit of a kind of a review. We're going to look at one paragraph that still continues to be a little bit esoteric, a little bit out there, and then we're going to come to the last part of the chapter, which will be more easily understood. So we're talking about the fact that there are ways for absolutely everybody to connect to Hashem. We're talking about what we call the Ahava Mesuteret, this innate hidden love that's in the DNA of every Jew, and how we connect to that. And he was going through last time, a couple of weeks ago, the different levels are called the Sfirot, or the divine emanations, and how we connect through the divine emanations to Hashem. And again, I'm not going to go through that again. It's more, again, some of the reason that part of this chapter is a little bit hard to understand. It's much more Kabbalistic. He doesn't do a lot of Kabbalistic stuff within the book, within Tanya, but this section happens to have some. We're going to look now a little bit deeper, just kind of give you a general idea of what we're going to talk about. Is remember that we talk about Chabad. Chabad is not just the title of a movement. It stands for three words. It stands for Chokhmah, Bina, and Da'at. Chokhmah, wisdom, Bina is intellect, Da'at is knowledge. And we've talked about those three items before. We talked what they are. But tonight we're going to see that in order for every Jew, and literally every Jew, to be able to connect to Hashem, it's always done through the idea of Chokhmah. And we're going to see what that actually means. And we'll come to the conclusion of the chapter of how it is that whether the person is the greatest gadol in the world to the person who is the lowest of the low has this direct connection to Hashem. What we're going to do is I'm going to put on screen share. I'm going to pick it up. I will tell you that this paragraph here that we're going to do now is a little bit more complicated. I'm going to give some free general translation. And then the sections in red, we're going to look at Rav Steinsaltz, and I'll read through him slowly because he actually gives us a much better understanding of this paragraph. As a result of all this idea, these connections that we have to Hashem on so many different levels, each one having a different connection to Hashem, but no matter what level they're at in life, having such a connection. Where does Hashem, the Shekhinah, the divine presence of Hashem, where does it emanate to us, into us? It's enrobed, so to speak, in the section in our being, or our part of our being, known as Chokhmah, wisdom. And we're going to give a definition of why and what that is. Meaning, no matter who the person is, by dint of the fact that he's Jewish, Hashem's connection to us will be found through Chokhmah. Doesn't mean through Chokhmah we discover him, but it means that the light, the Or Ein Sof, the light from Hashem comes to us through our Chokhmah that we have. Again, he's going to expand on that shortly. Ubechinata Chokhmah Sheba, and through this level of Chokhmah that a person has, Im Or Ein Sof Baruch Hu HaMelubash Ba, through this light that comes from Hashem, that's enrobed in him through his Chokhmah, mitpashetet b'chol bechinat hanefesh kula. We saw last time, we've seen multiple times already, that we are made up of multiple levels. Right now, we're just going to talk about the three: Chokhmah, Bina, Da'at. Chokhmah, the highest level. That this Chokhmah comes to our body. Sorry, the Or, the light of Hashem, the connection to Hashem, comes to us through the Chokhmah, through wisdom, and is distributed and emanates throughout our entire being. What does it do? It gives us life. From our head all the way down to the bottom of our feet. Chokhmah, wisdom, gives life to its owner. So far all we've said, I don't want to make it minimized. I'm not minimizing, it's only this, but the connection to Hashem, the Or, the light of Hashem, again, we're speaking anthropomorphically, we're speaking spiritually, that light comes to us through our Chokhmah, through our intellect, skipping the parentheses for now, going to right after in the red. And that's what we're going to focus on in a few minutes with Rav Steinsaltz. Chokhmah is the source of our seichel, our common sense, and our understanding. And that's even on a higher level than bina. Remember, chokhmah, bina, da'at. Chokhmah is the highest level. We use our bina, our intellect, to understand our seichel and what we acquire and what we can think of. Again, hang on to this for a minute. We're going to get into much cleaner understanding soon. Chokhmah is the highest level, much higher than bina, and it is the source for everything. Okay, what is he talking about here? What is going on? What do he mean the higher level? What is the source of bina? So let's take a look now. Go through this slowly. These next two slides will be a lot easier to understand, by the way, when we get to them. Okay, I just read now, in red, with these two bold lines. Let's go to what Rav Steinsaltz says. HaChochma eina hasechel ba'atzmo. Let me give you a little background before we jump into this. Let's say you're contemplating something, and all of a sudden an idea pops into your head. That fleeting moment of that idea coming into your head is chokhmah. How you interpret that, what you do with that, you use your seichel, you use your intellect, you use your binah, which is a heavier, deeper level of understanding. And we do this constantly, by the way. And we're going to see that. Chokhmah is not in and of itself intellect. Haseichel hamusag v'hamuvan, kfi shanu makirim oto, what we understand is the concept of seichel, hu habina, is really the concept of bina. We talked about bina being the ability to understand something from something else. Chokhmah is the top level. It is the source that gives us the power to have that intellect. What does that mean? I know that if I touch a burning hot stove, I'm going to burn my finger. Okay. I also know if I get too close, it may feel warm. The closer I get, the hotter it's going to get. I use my chokhmah is this idea that there is something that is hot in this world that could cause harm to me. My binah, my seichel are used to say, don't touch it because you're going to get burned. And he's going to give us examples. HaChokhmah hi hama'abar. The chokhmah is the connection or the transition into ben hamusag atzmo, heat. There's a concept of heat, for example. She'no muskal el haseichel hapoel, to the active thought process, el ha'havana shalanu b'davar, to the point of being able to understand. Again, there's the concept of heat. That's chokhmah. We know that there's heat. And I know that if I go near the stove, I put that into action by keeping my hand away from the hot stove. Thought process is a process connecting different ideas. You sometimes get rid of certain ideas and say it's not worthwhile. You say, I want to do this. You're hungry. Let's just take a simple idea. You're hungry. Chokhmah tells you that food is there for you. Bina and seichel allow you to do and take action for your hunger. But while you're deciding what to eat, you're saying, I do want this, I don't want that. It's the morning, I don't feel like having a big giant steak. It's the nighttime and I don't want just an apple. So your mind is using your chokhmah is giving the power to your binah and your da'at, your seichel, your intellect, to put into practice the general idea of the concept. But the process only begins from the point when from the level when there is a thing. There has to be something that you're contemplating. I can't be sitting here and talking to you, and then all of a sudden, I can't put something into practice and start speaking Chinese, right? Because I'm not thinking about Chinese. It's not in my mind. I don't know how to speak Chinese. I use this chokhmah to give power to my binah and da'at, to put things into practice, to take things apart, to put things together. The stage where the idea itself appears, the concept, the idea with which the intellect will make use of, hu shalav chokhmah. That's the level of chokhmah. Again, my brain tells me I'm hungry. I didn't do anything about it. It's chokhmah. It's a level of knowledge or wisdom. That level of chokhmah comes before the shalav of bina, lahavana hamuskelet. It comes before the level of action. This process, as I told you before, is so quick sometimes. We don't really think and consider and then take action. Therefore, in other words, if I were to ask you, what do you do when you're hungry? Your answer might be, I go get something to eat. But what really happened? Your brain told you, I'm hungry. There's a concept, hunger, flashing in your brain. Doesn't bring you any comfort, doesn't do anything, but it does is it gets you going to the next level of thinking, okay, because I am hungry, because the concept of hunger is now out there for me, now I have to do something about it. So I'll go to the refrigerator, I'll go to the makolet, I'll go to the store, I'll go to a restaurant. That's when you put that into practice. But the first stage is this idea. I lost place. So we're not always conscious of these stages. So in other words, I say to you, when you're hungry, what do? You say, I go eat. But there's a whole bunch of things that happen first. Only when there, for some reason, is a slowing down of this process. You can actually really see this transition. From the level, the stage of the idea appearing, of ra'ayon, of an idea appearing at first, the chokhmah, uven shalav hanituach, to the point of where it's dissected of what you have to do, habniyah, and the building of the tmuna hamuskelet bebina. When does this happen in a slow process? Person is out of a job. In their brain, the chokhmah says, I know I have to make money. I have to earn a wage. That's just a general idea. What am I going to do about that? Now, you don't just walk into an office, sit down at a desk and start working. It doesn't work that way. If you did, they'd probably call the police and throw you out. So what happens? You know you have to do something about that. So the fact that you're out of a job and need to look for work, it causes you to take action. What is the action? You have to start thinking, do I like what I'm doing? Do I want to find something else? How do I go about finding such a job? That's using your seichel, that's using your intellect, your common sense, your dot, your knowledge. Whom do I know that I can contact? The idea, but it all started with an idea. It all began with the chokhmah. I need to make money. I need to have a job. So when it's something that's protracted and takes time, then you can actually see those steps. HaChokhmah hi hanitzotz harishon shel hakara. What is chokhmah? It's that flash. It's that knowledge of, or the wisdom that there is a need. There is a something out there. That first grasp. Bilti muskelet v'bilti intellectalit. It's something that it's ephemeral. It's not something you can't point to it. In my mind, if I'm hungry, I can't point to anything. What can I point to? I can point to water if I'm thirsty. I took water because I was thirsty. The chokhmah in one's brain. And by the way, you're obviously constantly going through this and don't even realize it, is this flash of lightning, so to speak. It brightens up the dark. It gives you this flash of a picture. We've all been in situations where you're trying to make it, you're walking down the street. Maybe a week ago, something came up and it's been back here in the back of your mind. You're thinking about it. All of a sudden, this flash of brilliance comes through your mind. You're like, oh my gosh, I know what to do. But where does that come from? It comes from the chokhmah. That's what begins the moach, the idea. Then it gets put into practice. Then comes the process, the extended process. He has to think, okay, what did I just picture in my mind? I said, okay, I really like teaching. And I'm walking, so I remember, it went from, I need a job. I don't have any work. That's the chokhmah. I'm going to put it into practice. Okay, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that right now. walking down the street, all of a sudden the picture of someone in my mind comes to my head as someone like, oh my gosh, I know somebody. Again, that chokhmah is there, but that doesn't get me a job. I have to do something about it. So the chokhmah is that which builds and starts everything. Ein zo pula, I'm going to go to here. Ein zo pula chad pa'amit, ela pula shel pe'imo. It's not a one-step thing or one-time action. It's multiple actions that take place. Pulat chokhmah hi ke'en nitzotz chashmali. The putting into gear a person's chokhmah is kind of like an electrical spark. Hamazin pam achar pam pula shel manor. What does it do? It enables an engine to keep going and to keep going. B'sifuta Chabadit, Mufia Mashal Nosaf. I'm going to read this to you as a little idea that's brought here in the literature of Chabad. There's a mashal, an additional mashal, a parable. Adamit kashe b'ba'aya. A person is struggling with a certain problem. He sits and he's thinking and he's contemplating. And suddenly he's this flash. I found it. I discovered it. Eureka. If you ask him at that moment, what did he find? He can't explain. At that moment, he can't verbalize what it is he thought of. Chokhmah is that which engages the action of the seichel. But without action, chokhmah is nothing. It doesn't do you anything. I could have a wonderful idea in my head, it flashed in my head. It doesn't mean anything without putting it into action. Okay, so I'm not going to continue with this particular slide. Now, we're going to ask, I'm going to read this now, even though we haven't read it inside. I'm going to read this English question and answer to understand. Now, what have we just established? That chokhmah is the highest level, and it's through chokhmah that the light of Hashem comes to us, no matter what level Jew we are. It could be the greatest gadol to the lowest of the low, to someone who's a poshea, someone who's a sinner. Why does the light of the Ein Sof exist in chokhmah? We said that it comes to every Jew through chokhmah. Let me put it first into physical terms. When you want water in your house, let's say you don't have any water in your refrigerator, nothing on the table, you know bottle, what do you want? So would you walk over to your bookcase and hope water comes out of there? I would imagine not, and I hope it doesn't. If you do, you should call my son-in-law. Would you walk over to a window and just hope water's going to come out of there? You know you have to go to a beres, to a faucet and a sink. Why? Because that's where water comes into your house. It comes in through the pipes. It doesn't come in through the walls, although unfortunately for some people it has, but that's not where it comes in. So what we're saying here in Tanya, the Admor Zaken is saying that when the light of the Ein Sof literally means the not eternal, no, infinite. When the light of the infinite, i.e. Hashem, comes to every Jew, its gateway into our neshama is through our chokhmah. Why? Those faculties whose functions are intelligence and comprehension cannot serve as receptacles for the light of the Ein Sof. Our binah and our dat, which are the actions, which are the putting into action what we are with the chokhmah, those actions cannot serve to be the conduit through which the light of the Ein Sof comes to us. Why? For knowledge cannot grasp the unknowable. Only chokhmah, which itself is higher than comprehension, can receive this light. Chokhmah is something infinite in a sense. What does that mean? I can think about anything I want. I can think about what it would be like to be sitting on the planet Pluto right now if it's a planet. I can think about it. I can't do anything about it, but I can think about it. My mind is endless. Is infinite. I can think about anything I want. And it's through that kli, that utensil, that conduit, that the light of the Ein Sof comes to us. By the way, who cares? Why do I care where it comes from? What's it do for me? What's it do for you? So we're going to see. Let's take a look back now at the text. Go back up. Oh, by the way, chapter 18, part 3. Forgot that. So we're going to continue here from the words v'zehu. Move this up a little. So, v'zehu lashon chokhmah. This is what they tell us means of the meaning of the word chokhmah. It has two words in the word chokhmah. Koach ma. What is koach ma? What does that mean? Literally means power, and ma is what. What is what? What does that mean? It's the point where you don't know what something is. You say, what? What is that? I don't recognize that. I don't understand that word. I don't know what that concept is. Koach is power. So that which we're able to use to put something into action. So the word itself, and by the way, there's a lot written on this idea of koach ma, which I'm not going to get into. We will see. We may have talked about this once before. That the word behema, which means animal, like we talked the nefesh habahamit. The word behema is ba ma. It's two. If you break it down into two, bet hey mem hey ba. In it ma. What is there? Meaning there's nothing else. What you see is what you get. When a giraffe is born, it's a giraffe. It doesn't, other than physically growing, there's nothing else it can do, as opposed to human beings. So koach ma, the word chokhmah, when you rearrange the letters, gives us an idea of what is chokhmah. It is the wondering, the what, and then we have the koach from that to put something into practice. Shumashe no musag umuvan. It's something that we don't. It's something what's called abstract. We're not sure of what something is. We have yet to grasp what it is we're looking at. Imagine you are someone from the 10th century is transported to today, and he sees this in my hand. Right? He sees my phone. Ma, what is that? Seems to be able to do something. I have no idea what it is. Therefore, like I said in that slide before in the English, therefore, in us, the light of Hashem, the light of Ein Sof, that which connects us to God, is enrobed in the Chokhmah, because our intellect, our regular intellect, not our Chokhmah, but our Binah and our Dat, have absolutely no way to understand and to comprehend Hashem. It's impossible. Only what we can connect to with Hashem in the spiritual sense, in the metaphysical sense, the light of Hashem comes to us through the Chokhmah. It's the conduit. It's the equivalent, as I said before, of the water coming to your house through the pipes and not through the floor and not through the ceiling and not through your closet or your bed. Okay. Take a drink. Now we're going to I want to read one more sentence, and then we're going to come to a much clearer understanding. Oh, no, I actually got to it. From this point, for the next 2 slides, which is the rest of the chapter, there's nothing in Tanya that's easy, but it's going to be a little bit more clear now than the first part of this chapter, the first 75%. We've established 2 things. That no matter what level a person is at, there's always the ahava mesuteret. We have this innate love for God. It's always there. We also have established what is that connection between us and Hashem? Where is this line drawn that the light of Hashem comes to us through our neshama, through chokhmah? Now, I asked you before, so what? Here's the so what. Therefore, Kol Israel, and remember, this book is written in this 18th century, and until probably only 100 years ago, maybe less than that, women were seen of inferior knowledge and intellect. Now, I know a heck of a lot of women that are a heck of a lot smarter than me in many ways, in many levels. Women in general are smarter. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about book smart and knowledge and learning. It's amazing. The last 90 years, 100 years. And by the way, this is not unique to the Jews. Women were looked at as chattel, unfortunately, in most of history. Just go back into the Middle Ages. Women couldn't, even much later than that, women couldn't generally have a job. She couldn't own property. If she wanted, as early as late as the early 20th century in the United States, we know that women couldn't vote. In order to do certain things, she needed her husband's permission. Times, thank God, have changed radically. But listen to this sentence. Therefore, so everybody, every single Jew, therefore, because they have this connection to Hashem through their chokhmah, which the light of the Ein Sof comes to them, every Jew, even women, and even those who are boors, people who don't know anything. They believe there is a level of emunah in Hashem. Why? Sheha hi lamala min hadat lahasagat. Because emunah, faith, belief in Hashem, is above a higher level than your da'at and your knowledge or your ability to perceive something. Ki peti ya'amin l'chol davar v'harun yavin. Because a peti, a fool, will believe anything, and a person who's wise has to understand. What does this mean? What is he talking about? So evidently it seems that a peti, a person who is a fool, will believe anything. That sounds very negative, but listen how he uses this concept. Ulagabei akadosh baruch hu. When it comes to us vis-a-vis Hashem, shehu lemala min hasechel. L'gabei akadosh baruch hu lemala min hasechel. God supersedes, is higher than seichel and da'at. V'let machashavat tfisa beklal. And we have absolutely no way to conceive of Hashem. Hakol kipetim etzlo. We're all fools compared to God. We all fall in the category of a peti. Kidichtiv, as it says, "Vani ba'ar v'lo eda, behemot hayiti imach vani tamid imach." What does this pasuk mean without translating it even? Look at what it says. Klomar, meaning shebazeh shani ba'ar behemot. Because of the fact I am a fool relative to God. I mean, everybody has some level of intellect, but relative to the Ein Sof, we are not. We have no knowledge. Because I'm like that, ani tamid imcha. I am always with you. I'm always with you. Let me finish the sentence. V'lachein, and therefore, afilu kal shebekalim u'poshei Yisrael, even the lowest of the low, and even those who are sinners, mosrim nafsham al kedushat Hashem, are prepared to give up their life for Hashem, al harov, the majority of the time. V'sovlim inuyim kashim shelo lichpor b'Hashem echad, and they're even willing to suffer pain, bad yisurim, so they shouldn't rebel against God or deny God. V'af imhem burim v'amei haaretz, and even if they are absolute ignoramuses or just nobodies, ve'en yodim gedulat Hashem, and they have no concept of the gedulat Hashem, of the greatness of Hashem, they will still be willing to give up their life in kiddush Hashem if necessary. What's going on? He needs a drink for this. We have talked about what the Ahava Mesuteret does for us on more than one occasion in prior chapters. We talked about some stories. I've talked about legendary stories such as Daniel Pearl before he was executed by ISIS or whoever it was back then, and how people found themselves who were so far removed from religion, but yet they still could not bring themselves to go against God at the last minute of their lives when they knew that their lives were on the line. Where does that strength come from? Where is that Ahava Mesuteret? It comes in the Ahava Mesuteret, but how does that come to us through our DNA? Number one, we said it comes to us as a Yerusha. Beginning of this chapter, we said it is a form of an inheritance from Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, who were the Merkava. Remember, the Merkava means chariot. Chariot meant 100% subsumed to Hashem. A chariot by itself, without a driver, without a horse, doesn't do anything. Only with the horse, and the horse guides and drives that, moves it. So we receive that as a Yerusha. We receive that as an inheritance from Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. That is in every single Jew's DNA. And a person becomes Jewish, and they convert to Judaism, it becomes part of their DNA as well. And it is through that Ahava Mesuteret that we have that connection to Hashem, through that Or Ein Sof. No matter what level a person is at, that Jewish connection to Hashem, through the Or Ein Sof, through the Chokhmah, keeps that person connected to Hashem. And even someone says, I don't believe in God, and I don't, please, I'm an atheist and all. When they say in an expression, feet to the fire, and sometimes they have been in history, they have a very hard time, almost ever, saying they're willing to deny God. That's also the history behind the conversos. They used to be known as Marranos. Marrano in Spanish means pigs, which is a very negative way to talk about people, obviously. But the conversos, those who had converted to Christianity under pain of death, and we cannot judge them for what they went through, just like we can't judge anyone who went through the Holocaust and came out not believing in God and not keeping Torah. That That you can never judge someone about that. But what happened is that we've seen. I actually met a woman in Chicago many years ago. Came to speak at the school I was teaching at. She was a converso. She had no idea she was any Jewish blood whatsoever, and it's the old story. Usually, very often you'll find this in New Mexico. It's very common. They went to the cemetery and found the grave of her great grandmother. There's a little Jewish star, and she finds out from her mother that she heard that her great grandmother used to go down in the basement every Friday night and light candles. They were devout Christians. She didn't understand why they lit candles, and there was this spark stayed. It was still there, and she converted and became Jewish because she wasn't Jewish halachically. Where does that come from? Again, same story. Through the chokhmah that's part of every chokhmah bina da'at Chabad that every one of us has, the light, the Ein Sof Hashem, comes to us. It's that thread. It's the connection to Hashem, the Ahava Mesuteret, that prevents somebody who's Jewish almost always from denying God at the last minute of life. Just as one comment on that pasuk earlier about the petty, the fool. I didn't make a slide of this. I'm just going to read it and translate. It's one sentence from Rav Steinsaltz. To understand something, you have to have some knowledge. You have to have some sense. You have to have some seichel and also some common sense, some knowledge. But to believe something, even a person who's a complete fool can believe. It doesn't require knowledge. When a child is 5 years old, 6 years old, and they hurt themselves, and they say, "Oh, I hope Hashem helps and makes me feel better." It's not based on a knowledge that God exists and I know what Hashem does in the world and everything else. It's simple, pure, unadulterated emunah is given to them by their parents, hopefully. That doesn't require someone who has tremendous intellect. It can even be a child, and quote, petty, is a fool. In this case, doesn't mean they're foolish, just they don't have the knowledge. It doesn't take anything to believe. If I said to you, God forbid, I believe in the power of the sun, I don't have to know anything. What we do is take a look at one more slide. Okay. It's a story. I could have told you the story, but I prefer reading it in his words. And this is going to illustrate the idea of, even to the very end, almost every single Jew has this connection and will not be willing to deny God and God's existence, etc., and be willing to go against the religion. I'm starting right here. There was a story of a matzeva, a tombstone, that had written on it the following words: Ponik bar, here is buried, Ploni ben Ploni, so-and-so, Haganav HaKadosh, the holy thief. That's kind of a strange epitaph to be buried under. How did it happen that this Ganav became called holy? And they say, Ganav Kipshuto. There was a city that had this Jew who was known. He was a simple, as meaning in the simplest form. He was a Ganav. He stole. That's how he made his living. He stole. One time, one time it happened. He went a little too far, and he was caught stealing from the church. In that time period, that generation, if you were caught stealing from the church, there was one more thing you could be found guilty of, even more guilty than just stealing, that you were profaning their holy things, and the punishment was death. When he was brought to court, the judges gave him the following choice. If he will convert, he'll reject his religion and he'll change it into Natsrut, into Christianity. No longer by the fact that his Jew is holding this stuff in the church, it will no longer be a chilul, it will not be profanation of their holy stuff because he's Christian. All it is will be simple theft, And they're also willing to forgive him for that. And if he won't change and he won't give up his religion and become Christian, he said, guy, you better listen up, because if you don't do this, you're not with the program, we're going to put you to death. We're going to execute you by burning you at the stake. The story goes that this particular Jew, evidently this is a true story, that this Jew, this simple Jew, who was in fact a Ganav, he was a low life. Kam v'amar, he got up and said, Ani omnam Ganav. Yes, I am a thief. V'avarti harbe averot b'chayai, and I did a lot of wrong things in my life. Aval hamir dati, but to switch my religion and to convert out of Judaism, b'shum ofen lo, not a chance. And the moment they were about to light the fire under him, they turned to him again and said, you still have a chance to save yourself from this horrible death. He said, and the Ganav stayed with himself, meaning with his opinion. I'm willing to be burned in the fire and feel the pain of all the worst pain in the world. But I'm not willing to convert out of Judaism. And he was burned al Kiddush Hashem, and therefore it's cut off here at the bottom, earned the title of the Ganav HaKadosh, because he's Mekadesh Shem Shamayim in the last few seconds of his life. These stories we have heard about from the Holocaust. These stories you've heard many, many other situations. And this is like an amazing thing when you think about the Ganav HaKadosh. Okay. Let me just see something here. We have a few more lines in the chapter, but what I'd like to do, instead of finishing it now, we're going to actually finish it up next week. I want to listen to the summary of the chapter, because it'll put us into one more level of understanding before we finish the chapter. I think it'll help a lot.
Welcome back to Tanya in 5. The last few days we've been studying chapter 18. Having established that in addition to the Beinoni's intense internal struggle for self-control and discipline, he also requires some emotional attachment to God. In the preceding chapters, we described an emotional attachment that is born of a deep understanding and contemplation in the greatness and beauty of God. The next few chapters, the Alter Rebbe is going to lay out a pathway for attachment to God that does not require the kind of intellectual prowess that the pathway of the preceding chapters require. This attachment that he's going to describe is what he terms the Ahava Mesuteres, the hidden love. Within every Jew, there is concealed a natural inborn love for God. And the only question is how to tap into it. First, in chapter 18 and 19, the Alter Rebbe is going to define this hidden love and going to tell us how we might experience it. And in chapter 18, he addresses the following. First of all, where does it come from? How does every Jew have this inherent hidden love for God? To that he says, our forefathers have so self-surrendered their personal being to God to the point that they had no independent desire or motivation. They were like vehicles for God. Just like my car doesn't have an independent will, it just exists to fulfill my command through it. So too, our forefathers were so self-surrendered to God that they were like transparent vehicles to express godliness in this world. This reality was so deep for them that it became part of their spiritual DNA. And ever since then, that spiritual DNA has been passed on to every one of their descendants, to every Jew. And this is indeed the divine and godly spark we've been talking about in chapter 2. Now, where in the soul does one experience godliness? Seemingly, a human being is a limited, mortal man. God is infinite. How does the mortal man contain within him infinite? So the Alter Rebbe identifies a certain level of the soul called Chokhmah. The level of Chokhmah is the innate capacity the soul has to produce ideas. So think of the moment that an idea pops into your head. You know that there is some part of you that can produce that idea, but you don't know what it is. It's not as if you can go somewhere into the back of your brain, open up a file cabinet, and pull out a bunch of ideas. You have to kind of clear your mind and surrender to the innate ability you have for ideas and allow the idea to come forth. It's true creativity. True creativity is an innate capacity we have, and there's just somewhere in our subconscious that just produces these ideas. And therefore, this capacity for Chokhmah, says the Alter Rebbe, is not logic itself. It's not as if we know the mechanisms of how ideas come to us, but it is the source of logic. It transcends logic, but it is the source of logic. And that is where you can meet the infinite, in the part of you that transcends your logical and rational limitations. And that is where faith exists. Faith exists not as the result of some logical and rational conclusion. No, faith is the acknowledgement that there are some things that are beyond my rationale. There are some things that are beyond my logic. And all of my logic and all of my reason are only built on the faith that I have, which transcends my logic. And that is where I can meet the infinite, when I acknowledge my limits. Even as lofty as my intellect is, and as great and as smart as I am, it falls short of infinite. And when I acknowledge that, and I have faith in that which is beyond, now I'm tapping into God himself. And that is where this hidden love exists, in this divine space within the soul that transcends the limits of the normal human experience of logic and reason. And this is expressed in the fact that every Jew is capable of literally giving up his life for God. It has happened in history, unfortunately, and God forbid if it ever happened again, and a Jew is put to the test, bow down to that idol, or face death. Jews, by and large, will choose death. It's not as if they can explain why. It's not as if they've come to some logical conclusion that, it's better to die than to worship an idol. It's this inborn, natural instinct. It transcends and defies logic. It's this faith element that says, I cannot do something that denies my God, and I'll die rather than doing that. More on that in chapter 19. The takeaway from all of this is, don't get carried away with how grand and smart you might actually be. The moment you acknowledge the limits of your rationale, and you acknowledge that there's something beyond it, now you've truly touched the infinite. Now you've truly met the divine. Looking forward to seeing you when we conclude chapter 19.
Okay, so what I want to do is just take a look for a moment at, let me take it off, the last couple lines, because what he said there at the end is the last couple lines that we have yet to read. Let's finish up the chapter real quick here. Let's go back up. Okay, starting from V'gam. V'gam b'me'at shiodim. Even those few who really do know, ein mitbonenim klal, ve'ein mosim nafsham machmat da'at v'hitbonut b'Hashem klal. It's not that they have, like he was saying at the end, it's not that there's this thought process like, yeah, it's got to be better to get myself killed than it is to bow down to this idol. That's not how it works. Ela b'li shum da'at, without any direct knowledge, v'hitbonutim, without even really contemplating it. Rak ke'elu hu davar she'efshar klal lachbor b'Hashem echad. Just it's something we can't do. Innately as Jews, we can't deny God. We can't allow ourselves just to get rid of Hashem. Why? Because, as we said, been saying throughout this chapter, Hashem himself is the one who enlightens and gives life to us through our nefesh, through our neshama, through the chokhmah, how Hashem comes to us, connects to us, beyond rationale, beyond knowledge, beyond understanding and acquiring knowledge. It's something you cannot put your finger on. It's the chokhmah, it's the light that comes to us. And that's how every single Jew has the capacity to connect to Hashem. Again, no matter how great they are, no matter how low they might be. Okay, that's the end of chapter 18. Granted, a bit of a difficult chapter in some respects, but somewhat clear. I'll give you a little bit next week, just a 1 or 2 minute review, which will then bring us into 19, which has in it, starts with an amazing concept or mashal, a parable that everyone can connect to. We all, and I'm using that word on purpose about connection because it's about connecting to Hashem. Bezrat Hashem next week. And meantime, have a wonderful evening and a great day tomorrow.
You too, man.